Slides don't work. We have to do a keep and trace. There it was.
Nothing like bad cables.
All right, that's warming up.
There you go. Those are all the conferences we're considering with the ICS Village. I hate when it does that because it goes like one like slide over. I don't know why it does it, but it does it.
I think I'm going to ask you to move your microphone so it doesn't rub against your ones. Thank you.
It's kind of from the podium to the left side of the stairs. The far right's kind of off the edge of the camera.
Oh, is it? It's a static camera?
Yeah.
That's all right. There'll be parts where I'm off camera.
Some people just stand in one place. Some people pace all over.
Oh no, I go into the audience.
Oh, nice.
I like interaction. So one of the gags that I do, because I like the audience to be able to participate. Well, what's the best way to participate? You don't have a roving mic, do you?
No.
Well, I do.
There you go. Yeah, just right up in the face, and the mic's right there.
Yeah. I'm going to be among the people.
You will not be among the videos.
I know. If you've seen some of my talks, that's what happened. Is all of a sudden you'll just see me disappear, and you'll hear this disembodied voice as the video is on the screen. You hear some laughter. I'll occasionally reappear. It's usually nervous laughter. Have you seen this one before? I've been given this for 3 years. The thing that's funny about it is, so this shows the emphasis I had on this is because everyone likes ODay. And it's like, you don't have to do anything to find ODay in an IoT. It's just a fucking joke. But so my whole point is that that's not the point of IoT anyway. Well, you're going to hear this in the talk. So what I did is I focused on demonstrating lateral movement at a mass level. Like, how do you do this times thousands of devices easily with no code required? Like, just go to GitHub. So, and then the Russians got caught using this technique in August. So that was the thing that Microsoft found So I show the limitations of that attack because it doesn't work on this particular device, which is why they were focusing on the enterprise level. And then I show what they did, and then actually mine requires less memory, so it's even more effective than what they were doing. Look at this empty front row. If you saw my DerbyCon talk, this is called the splash zone.
Hello, BSides DC.
Hello!
Hey, that's better than I expected for a post-lunch crowd.
Front row's open.
Yeah, move forward. He likes to talk to people in the crowd, so come on up.
Look, it's like...
Prime seat right there.
This guy.
Now we got a volunteer.
Fuck the rest of you. You're in the military, aren't you? No. Oh, okay. You have the haircut. And you do exactly what people tell you. It's interesting.
All right, yeah, come, front row, right here.
Kai, right here. I just cleaned this seat. See, look.
Okay. All right, now that the front row is not empty, we can get started. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for a man in a unicorn onesie.
Yeah, once you see my background, you're going to be like, what the fuck went wrong there? How do you end up like this? Maybe I'll turn this into a career talk, and this is like what not to do. So the name of the talk is No IOUs with IoT. Who came here expecting like the traditional DEF CON presentation of, I'm going to drop some O-Day on some IoT? Anybody? Kind of? Why kind of? Because I don't look like I'm technically competent? What's that? Walked in, maybe. He's honest. I like heckling, so good job, but I will fire back. IoT is not hard. If you want to feel like one of those elite rock stars that you see on Twitter, on YouTube, dropping O-Day, go do it with IoT. You can literally look at this stuff and it'll fall over. It's that bad. So we're not going to do that. All right, so just in terms of expectation management, both clearly in my technical capabilities and mental faculties are apparent. What's your name, by the way? Josh. As Josh rightly pointed out. So we're not going to do that. So this is me. I founded GRIMM. I co-founded the ICS Village. Who knows the ICS Village? Who's done any of our CTFs? Really? How'd you do?
Did the neighborhood. It was pretty good.
The neighborhood? Oh, Howdy Neighbor?
Yeah, Howdy Neighbor. So
Howdy Neighbor is actually a GRIMM exhibit that we built. But it's a part of the ICS Village CTF. Hack the Planet, right? So we've done that. We've been at DEF CON now for, I don't know, I've lost count, 6, 7 years. We are at multiple conferences. The ICS Village, John. Thanks, man. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We even have our own conference. Has anybody heard of Hack the Capitol? You're the only person I haven't met that has apparently been at my conference, I guess. Hi, Bryson.
Derek.
Derek, nice to meet you.
I know Monte.
Oh, you know Monte? Monte is a better speaker than I am.
He works for me.
I do not. Hack the Capitol is, the nonprofit mission, we do education awareness on critical infrastructure. And it occurred to us, since I'm locally based, wow, it's like the US government is based here and they're incompetent and they don't know things. Maybe we should try to give them some education on critical infrastructure. So we created our own conference called Hack the Capitol. It's annually in May. We're hosted inside the Reagan building, so we're actually on federal government space. And we do a lot of stuff, but we bring members of Congress, we bring congressional staffers, we bring think tanks. So it's essentially their chance to meet with the technical community to learn how to do their fucking jobs. So please come to that conference if you're interested. It's free. Our nonprofit pays for everything. And then last year, I launched a company called SCYTHE. So that's now my full-time job. I'm now a commercial software vendor whore. and this is what I do for a living. And on top of that, I'm a fellow at the National Security Institute and on the board of advisors for the Army Cyber Institute. All right, so we're going to be talking through what is IoT, the landscape types. We're going to do a demonstration. If you saw the preface for this, I'm going to provide you with a take-home lab. So what I'm going to demonstrate here today, you can go and do in the comfort of your own home. I'm going to emphasize it here, and I'll emphasize it again later in the talk, what you do in the comfort of your own home, not on anybody else's home. I like a collaborative style. I think that I am not the smartest person in the room or the world, clearly. And together, we can all be smarter. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you want to be like Josh and try to heckle, you can do that. And I'm a former Army officer, so my approach to things is you can voluntarily do things, or I will volunteer you. Lack of eye contact or eye contact will have the same results for you, so there's nowhere to hide as long as you're in this room. Sean's laughing because he's seen this before. All right, Consumer Electronics Show last year. Anybody heard of the Consumer Electronics Show? Yes, this is where the industry around the world gets together, 200,000 people descend on Las Vegas, and all pitch to each other all the wonderful ways that they're all going to send us to hell in a handbasket security-wise. I mean, sell you things you want. So I went around with Rob Pecoraro, who at the time was writing for Yahoo Finance, and what we did is we went to different vendors that struck our interest. And of course, the setup is bring what looks like a security expert to one of these vendors and start asking them security questions. How do you think that went? Like I said, it was a setup. Mostly it would be salesperson like blinking furiously like, wait, you're not trying to like buy what? I don't understand. And then usually a manager would come over and like handle me away. My favorite vendor though is the Shadecraft umbrella. Who has heard of the Shadecraft umbrella before? You have? Really? Go around you, go around here. Tell us what you know.
It moves.
It moves. It does. Wait, I ran all the way over here for that. That's all you got. You got something else, right?
That's all I got.
Does it? You think it blocks the shade at least?
It tries.
It tries. What's your name?
Jim.
Jim? That was very disappointing. But you all saw that. Well, I'm not on keto, clearly, and that's as far as my aerobic capability lasts. So if I'm going to have to do that. This thing's hot. This is fleece. If I'm going to run, I want a little better, okay? You now know a standard, Jim. You got it? Set the standard. That's the bottom. I'm the demonstration of the bottom. You just got to like, literally, you could like trip over it.
Okay, that's good. I'm good to know.
The Shadecraft umbrella talks pretty much every communication protocol you can imagine. It does move, so it's solar powered because there's a battery in the base, and it follows the sun. It can do everything but your homework pretty much. So the first question is, how much do you think it costs? Too much? Well, of course the answer is too much. See, I don't mind being as disappointed because I didn't have to run over here for that answer. Can you put a number to too much, sir, or are there things I can sell you?
I don't know, let's say like 5,000 or something.
5,000 or something. Okay. What do you think? Too high, too low? Too high? Too low. Keep going. You're drinking Starbucks. You like overpaying for things.
Actually, I got a refund, 2,500.
2,500? No, more. We're going the other way. You also don't listen because I said 5,000 was too low. Go up.
7,500.
What?
7,500.
No, above 5,000. What? Oh, did you say 7,500?
Yes, sir.
Ah, I'm a moron. Okay, to be fair, I got in from South Dakota after midnight last night, but I apologize. You are correct. Mea culpa. Not 7,500, still too low, but I'm an idiot. 8 grand. So it was just over that. It was like $8,700, $9,000. So the first question is, who wants a $9,000 umbrella? Rich folks. Who said that? Oh, see, that was a good answer. Excuse me, coming through. Watch the tail, watch the tail. Boom. Fist bump. That was awesome. Oh, it's easier to go around that way. Sort of. So the demographic, like I told you, if I talked to salespeople, I would find the manager come over to handle me. I was lucky that I met a Silicon Valley COO who happened to be there with Shadecraft. She informs me that she was buying 10 for her vineyard. I'm not making that up. That's not a punchline. That's actually what she told me. They, of course, had zero concept of security. And this was the best example not only of an overpriced product, but one that was rife full of all sorts of opportunities to do something with. If you can have one takeaway on security, the more you have in code or function means exponentially greater surface area for compromise. Do we know what surface area is? What's surface area? You're on your computer. What are you doing?
I'm taking copious notes. Actually, I'm looking at my calendar.
Oh, hey, oh.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I took a note to send that conference that you mentioned. Surface area is an opportunity to exploit something.
Okay. Yeah, so surface area is what establishes access, right? I can't do something unless I can touch it. Hackers are not omniscient or omnipotent. I can't hack it if I can't find some way to interact with it. Surface area is that technical purchase where I'm able to go, get into the code, get onto the machine, and do something that I want. 2 takeaways. If it could be internet connected. If it could be internet connected. If it could be voice enabled. Why is voice enabling a problem now? We know internet connected. We just talked about I can't hack what I can't touch. Why is voice enabling an issue? Blah, 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 blah. Secretly. Well, is it really secret? You're actually paying for it. You can order shit. So yes, your kids can now, reorder the dildo that you just got. But when we say secretly record shit, what do we actually mean? It's not covert. You paid for it. You said, I like the fact I can ask Alexa to do something.
You're unaware of it when you're not interacting.
Yes. So that's the problem, because it's always on. So it's always on listening, but then where does it go? The cloud, right? So we're going to be covering shortly why IoT devices have to be cloud connected and internet connected. But now with voice enabling, we have privacy concerns because they're always on. And we tend to forget that they're there when we're like Monte's boss ordering sex toys. Which, by the way, sex toys are IoT. RenderMan, yes. What was that, Cassie?
Oh, just saying you can control them via Bluetooth.
You can control them via Bluetooth. Yeah, and hack them. DDoSing. Now imagine some of you men in this room using what passes for some of those sex toys, and you get ransomwared. Yeah, it's funny. It's going to happen. And it won't be funny then. Think about it. Think about what will happen. Like, yeah, I mean, John Wayne Bobbitt through the internet. Yeah, I was like, oh, that's, it was funny until it was dark. Don't go check what you have at home right away, okay? Stay for the rest of the talk. It's dumb to be smart. Did you know that a smart TV now costs you less as a consumer to buy than a smart TV? Why? Services. What about those services? They're spying on you. They're collecting data on your habits, and they're monetizing you as the viewer. You as the consumer are being monetized by these devices. There is a phenomenal study, and now I'm being facetious, that came out from McKinsey in 2015, 60 pages that they privately released to all the auto manufacturers on them saying, here's how you can monetize drivers. Now, who's ever read an end user license agreement, a EULA?
No one.
Well, Sean, you do weird things for Ars Technica.
Yes, I do.
That's technically the press, right?
Yeah, technically. So
Okay.
things that people don't normally do.
You do things that people don't normally do. I also do it, but it's unadvised when I do it. But go on.
And the end user license agreement often includes things about
if you haven't read the EULA, when you buy something, you're giving them the permission to collect data on you, essentially, in many of these licenses.
But that's in plain and simple language on page 1, right?
No. It's usually buried around page 94.
Yes. Which is why none of the rest of us have ever read a EULA. I've asked that question at a conference of entirely lawyers. They were honest too. Like one hand went up. I'm like, oh, you're the person who writes those. So buried in that I agree click-through is where we are signing our privacy away. They're monetizing you as the consumer, but they're charging you less because they're making money on you another way, right? This is the lesson we as society learned from Facebook, besides the next lesson we've learned from Facebook, besides the lesson we're currently learning from Facebook. Does anybody know Mark Zuckerberg? Can we just have a talk with him? No, really? He's harming all of us? Bad? What?
I know people who work.
You know people who work for him. So you're committing to being able to do something about that?
No.
What if I asked again?
No.
Worth a shot. His eyes said yes, though. His mouth said no. All right, so who has IoT devices? If you're not raising your hand, you're just choosing not to participate. Yes, that's you. Thank you. So we all have them. Now here's the question. Suchi! How many IoT devices do you have, Suchi?
I have one.
One. That is a lie. We don't tend to know even how many I have. We're all aware of the problem of asset discovery in enterprise, because we talk about that all the time. We have the same problem as consumers. We don't know how many devices are in our homes. I really don't know even. I've never really kept count of it. It's just they're sort of there, and you kind of think about them, and occasionally it tells me to patch it or not. We'll be covering that later. So IT versus IoT. So now we're talking enterprise. So first problem we have with enterprise is bring your own device. So who has a cell phone? Do you bring that to work? Do you do work mail on that? So we have a few no's, but most of us, yes. Is there an enterprise policy on you doing that? Some places, yes. Some places, no. The challenge that you have at the enterprise level is it's very easy for employees to bring their Apple Watches or Android smartwatches or their phones or whatever other things they have into that environment. It's difficult to control. So this is where we get the problem of rogues. How many of you are engineers? How many of you like it when somebody tells you what you can't do? Seriously, Kai? Why do you like being? Because you do it anyway. So he was just like, I'm going to raise my hand because I don't mind it, and fuck you, it's going to happen anyway. The rest of you just were like, fuck you, it's going to happen anyway. That's the engineering mindset. I'm not going to let somebody who's like, what are you, like a deputy editor, chief of staff, or like, you're like important. You're my nominal executive wearing a hoodie to blend in. When Sean tells his staff, no, actually, you're better. When you tell Monte what he can or can't do, yeah, exactly. Why would you even bother? Funny thing about corporations is they think that their drones all do what they tell them, though. They do. There is an expectation. There are people with starched shirts. I've seen them. They exist. And we ignore them. On top of that, in the enterprise, we have vendors. Vendors need to do maintenance on their things, whether that's sensors, whether that's HVAC, temperature control. If you're in a critical infrastructure environment, you're going to have an even greater chain there. And then as we see in the same problem that we have in the consumer world, these things have a cloud backend. By definition, IoT is really two things. Cheap computing with limited resources. Some level of battery life, maybe. That's why they're proliferating. They need the cloud backend to be truly functional because we now have reached this point where we can trust that I can have a wireless connection to somewhere else in the world, and then I can have my big iron there to do all of the heavy thinking. And then signatures. So this is the hard part where you're an enterprise. This environment is fragmented. There are so many different types. So if you think about that from a technical perspective, how do I even identify what's on my network unless I physically put it there? And if we have this problem of users with BYOD or Kai doing the rogue thing, you can't even figure out what it is, let alone where it is. Enterprise challenges. Oh yeah, this next slide. Who is responsible for updating the security or the patches on a consumer IoT device? A company that went out of business. That's for them to provide it. So we do have the Chinese, company that's there for 3 months, or Taiwanese company, and all of a sudden it appears and they disappear and you're done. But let's assume they've lived longer than 3 months, right? The patch is there. Who's responsible for updating it? Us! Or in the bottom right corner, Putin will do it for you. What do you think of this security model so far? This is the security model. Yeah, woo! This is why we're all fucked. In one slide. I could talk the entire presentation to this one slide. Users are responsible. Well, let's see how our users do it, updating things. Anybody remember stage fright? Yep.
Yes. Yes. And?
That's why I got an iPhone.
That's why you got an iPhone? That didn't really matter.
Yeah.
Stage fright also worked against iPhone.
I didn't know that.
Users! Stage fright was, I don't even remember when it was. It was several, who? All right, you're really gonna have the answer because I'm walking, because I'm not gonna run again. I am starting to get hot. You know what I mean?
So stage fright was a vulnerability in a library that the iOS and Android used. The vulnerability was the way that it read images, and then so it ended up being a buffer overflow, and then you can end up writing exploit code into that.
So how did I deliver that exploit?
Through sending someone a picture.
All I had to do was send you a text. Yep. Did you even have to open the text?
Negative. No, you did. All I had to do was be able to read that text. That's it. So it was a very simple O-day, and it went out very quickly.
So all I have to do is send you a text. All I need is your phone number. I have your whole phone. No user interaction required. Going back to, I can't hack what I can't touch. All I need is your phone number. That is the patching across the world 9 months after the patch was available. Is there any easier device that you know of than your phone to update? It literally comes to you and says, update me. Please do it. Update me. Why haven't you updated me yet? 9 months across the world. All of that red in that eye chart is users not having patched that critical vulnerability, which is literally, there is no worst case other than some mental telepathy where I can just say I have your phone. That is like the ultimate silver bullet for compromise. It worked across all platforms, and it required nothing more than just being able to know where you were. Done. On top of that, it turns out your phones are not indefinitely supported. You have to buy a new phone. Hi, Sophia, or are you just showing me a phone? So yeah. John and Suchi, Sophia, and Jesse are right there. Jesse, you didn't wave. Hi. You have to buy a new phone because the manufacturers only support you for a limited period of time. Android 3 years, Apple 5 years. Let alone if your battery life got you that far because your batteries are degrading the second you buy them. It's a scam, says the guy who knows Facebook people.
Yes.
Next up, social engineering a country. So, herd immunity. Who's heard of the concept of herd immunity? Wow. I was just in South Dakota. I feel like more people would have known it there than here. Raise those hands again. All right, you look cool. Tell me about it. You don't have to stand up.
Mitigation through quantity. The more people who are immune to something, the slower it spreads.
Okay. So if we think about this in a ceiling and a floor, right? What is that? How would that concept apply?
A ceiling and a floor.
Well, there's like a top percentage and a bottom percentage to the population.
Most people, if more people are immune, the more people that are immune, the less likely something is to pop up one, and the more people that are immune, the less likely it is to spread.
Who knows where the concept of herd immunity originated? Vaccines. Epidemiological studies of cattle, hence herd. Why this matters to us in this conversation is the same principle applies to the challenge we have with IoT. So earlier when I talked about more function, more availability, more surface area, now let's apply that to if we think about all of the computing devices in our ecosystem. And by the way, all of our ecosystems interact, right? All the way from our personal ecosystem as a consumer to organization. And this is where I can make my critical infrastructure joke. An air gap is not an air gap is not an air gap. Nobody got that? It's going to be that kind of day. All right. Herd immunity is the fact that we just showed the security model, users. We show how well users do it on the biggest problem we've ever seen. And now let's tie this to, I can pull like a CES graph up of what do you think the adoption rate is for IoT devices? It's like a Freddie Mercury pose. So we're Freddie Mercurying ourselves. Ooh, that could mean a lot of things. Give me a moment. So IoT devices are vectors to other things. This is now what we're going to demonstrate through this talk. The IoT device isn't actually the problem. What is on an IoT device? Does an IoT device have your credit card information? No. Does it really have much of anything most of the time? No. The problem is that they are proliferating in the environment. We talked about the security model. So they are this increasing exponential number of vectors to things we do care about. What are some things we care about? What is something you care about besides beard oil?
Privacy.
Privacy. So this is there are different examples, some of which we covered. One of the ones that I want to point out as a red herring. People are afraid of webcams because they think that somebody out there is looking to find you. Does that happen? Because I'm talking to engineers, so you're going to be specific. Yes. Is that the primary threat model? No. There are weirdos out there. But not in here? Oh, in here? Are you one too? Yes. Thank you for self-identifying. I was feeling lonely. Can I sit over there by you? Ooh, what are we eating? Okay. So besides privacy, what do you think is another concern we should have about the fact that these can vector into something else?
Staging.
Staging. Staging what?
We're staging to other devices that have private information.
Okay. Like what kinds of private information?
Well, like things that have social security numbers and credit cards and that sort of thing.
PII and PHI. Financial information. Taxes. That's what we're going to demonstrate. We're also going to show how easy it is because, again, our very preface was you don't have to be very technical to do any of this stuff. Key example. All you have to do is just know how to find it and run some code. Well, fortunately, the world is kind at giving us this. So we have seen 4 kinds of attack campaigns in the threat landscape. Distributed denial of service. Is anybody in here Brian Krebs? So you're not worried about that, okay? Ransomware. Sean, I feel like you have an opinion about ransomware. Yeah, I might have an opinion about ransomware. Anything you would like to share, or I won't pick on you on this one?
Sure, I can share an opinion. So ransomware is that one thing that will get you no matter what, if you have more than one person on your network, because somebody's inevitably going to click on something. If you haven't patched, if you have devices that have an attack surface at all, and you have email connected to them in some way, or it's a device on a network that has a vulnerability that can be remotely scanned and exploited, you will find ransomware on your network, and it will make your life very not happy, as Baltimore found out. As Baltimore found out, yeah.
So what happened in Baltimore, if you could summarize in 2 sentences or less?
Sure. So somebody in Baltimore clicked on an attachment in an email, and this ransomware called Robinhood deployed itself across the entire network, took down the water billing software for the city, as well as a number of other servers, including servers that allowed people to do real estate transactions, and basically wiped out the city's ability to collect money for over a month and a half.
About how many ransomware incidents have we seen across the United States in the last 12 months against cities, municipalities, water plants?
It's in the hundreds, if not the thousands at this point.
Publicly. Thank you, John. What is it you do for a living again? I didn't mean to pick on you that way. John's an Intel analyst. That's why he actually thinks about the second order effect. So this is already happening to us. If you haven't seen it in the news, which I can't imagine any of you haven't, one of the primary problems that we've had, the issue that we've had here is because, again, all these things were internet connected. The obscurity of them didn't matter. And also, by the way, the fact that something might have been like a small city or a small county or even like a water utility, that might not be what we would consider like a primary thing to target. But what if I don't have to think about it real hard to just hit lots of things at the same time? Then it's just pretty much anything below that waterline that's vulnerable is going to get caught. And this is where ransomware is really getting us. Texas is a great example. They had 23, and they hit an MSP, and they used the MSP to spread. Cryptojacking. Anybody know what cryptojacking is? Is that, no? Okay.
It's using the end user's compute power to do Bitcoin computation for your own profit.
Yep. So we have all of these cycles. One Nest thermostat's not going to be able to mine a whole lot for me, right? By definition, it doesn't have a lot of computational capacity. What about 1 million nests? What about that times, what is Bitcoin going for these days? Does anybody know? 120 what? Wait, one Bitcoin's worth $120,000? 9,300? Oh, I was about to say, because I was about to quit my talk and walk out. like, I'm done. I don't have to do this anymore. I don't have to perform for your amusement. Like, I could quit my life. See you in the Caymans. This became a thing because of 2 factors. One, there's a lot more devices, and the Bitcoins will someday be worth that, but they became worth something. They were like this, and then they shot up. From what I've seen over the last couple of years, it's sort of been between $8,000 and $10,000. But put those 2 factors together, this is what we've seen. And then recently, so I've been giving this talk for over 2 years, updating it, modifying it, and doing lots of different things. And when I first started doing this with my entire focus on that it's not the IoT device, but it's the vector to something else, I was the only person saying that. Well, never say that because it's always untrue. I was one of the few people who was highlighting that aspect. Does anybody know what happened in August? Microsoft caught somebody doing something. That's also very vague, but tied specifically to lateral vector. Don't worry about it, we'll come back to it. But now recently, a common thing, and we will talk through that later. So history of attacks. There are 2 major attack types that we've seen. The first is Mirai. Mirai said every device that gets pushed out in IoT pretty much has a default username and password, and go back to our user model, very few of us update them. So all I have to do is try a handful of combinations, and anything I can see, I just try those and work, because do IoT devices typically time out if I try too hard? Nope. Are any of you monitoring what's connecting to your IoT devices in a 24/7 SOC? Nope. We don't do that at home. Mirai, boom, over 1 million devices. Then we have the more sophisticated ones, like Reaper and IOTroop. They said, there's a lot of published code because we're constantly finding vulnerabilities, and then we're very kind as the security community that we share the proof of concept of how those work. Even if we're doing that with responsible disclosure, which we should, we go back to the problem of when does the patch actually come out? when do users actually put them in play. So all I have to do is know what your device is, match it to proof of concept code that's going to be able to compromise it, done. So they just had a catalog of 65 POC end days, and any device that matched those, they just threw that and took it. The other public example we have, and this is attributed to Iran, is there was a fish tank in a casino in Las Vegas. Going back to our vendors, the vendor had sensors in the think tank to manage the temperature remotely, and that was what was compromised. They used that as a lateral vector jump into the casino, and I could also be in the Caymans if that had been me. So here's the setup. We're going to run through this quickly. We've got about 12 minutes remaining. The setup is we are an average consumer. We're bringing in a webcam. In this particular example, it's this version of GeoVision webcam. I'm not picking on GeoVision. I'm not picking on webcams. Any IoT device would be suitable for this demo. So first up, we as the user are going to configure the webcam. So we log in with the default credentials. And it kindly prompts us to change the password. That's actually an above average feature. So we're going to try to change the password. Nope. You want to know if there's proof that there's evil in the world? It's any web page that does that to you. So we got in eventually, just trying to change the password here. And we're in. We can now, for security reasons in this case, we can now keep an eye on our baby. So we've configured it. We want this to be internet accessible, of course. And we have our new password. What is our new password? Applesauce, exclamation point, because it made it hard for us to do something different. Exclamation point, 70% of the time, is the symbol that every user does in their password. So tie that to a dictionary attack. How do I get out? No, not start again. Go to the next slide. Let me go to the next slide. There we go. So now we're going to demonstrate this from the attack perspective. So we're going to do reconnaissance, enumeration. Enumeration is I have to fingerprint that exact device to make sure it works. Compromise, pivot, steal. That's the fun stuff. Need an arbitrary, stupid picture to demonstrate hackers. So he's wearing a baklava. He's wearing a bandana. He's holding an implement that has nothing to do with a computer and a computer. All right. So first up, we're going to try the Mirai style of attack. We are going to try. OK, so first question, will this work? It should not. Why shouldn't it? Because we changed the defaults.
What about other accounts that aren't showing?
What about other accounts that aren't showing? For the purpose of this demonstration, we're assuming there's only one account on the machine. But you bring up a great example, particularly when we're talking about Linux devices, that they come with multiple default roles, many of which are never exposed to the user. In the interest of time, what we're going to show here is, has everyone heard of Census? Has everyone heard of Shodan? OK, Shodan's a smaller brother. This is our OSINT platform where all I have to do is plug in the particular device that I'm looking for and what protocol it talks, and it already has an open database of all of those around the world. I don't have to go anywhere. That's what Shodan does. That's where everybody gets to look really cool and be like, look at all the things I can hack. Look at all the things I can hack. So that's what we've got here. We've now got our list of everything that is vulnerable to the code we're about to throw, and I didn't have to do anything as a user, as a hacker, other than to just go to a website that already has an open source database for me to do all of that. And it already tells me what's vulnerable to my code. Like, I don't even have to worry about that. So we've got our enumeration. We've defined the environment. You can get all sorts of interesting information in here. And then the next part of this demo is we show the brute force attack, which, of course, doesn't work. And in the interest of time, we're moving on. This is the actual code that we're throwing. So it's available out there. It's free, open source. You don't have to know anything. All these details are in the lab. This morning, I took a look on GitHub to see how many code commits there were for GeoVision on GitHub. There are 30,503 as of this morning of people out there updating code for you to use. Now, this is the fun part. Now, we're going to try that code, so the Reaper IO troop method of this isn't patched, there's published code. All I have to do is all those IP addresses I have, throw that code against every single one of them. So in this case, we're only doing this against one webcam, but how hard is that to write a simple script with a few lines to now do thousands? Not. So we're in. We have administrative access because we used a compromise, so I now own the machine, which means I can also figure out what that password was. From that, we're going to enumerate what else can we see. Again, because I'm probably going to be, how much time do I have left? 8. OK, we can do this. So I'm enumerating all network file shares from this. Why do I want to do that? I find a real computer that has a network file share. So in this case, we see a Windows file share. That's going to be interesting. That's their home computer. What do we have on that machine? Well, first up, we find family photos. So we're going to download all those and take a look. This is the fun part where we're just demonstrating what's fun as a hacker when you get to do this. So we pull those down. We take a look at them. Ah, it's a hipster. OK, but that's not really interesting. And again, keep in mind that this can be automated even though we're demonstrating this manually. So what do we really want? We want anything that looks like passwords, money, bank accounts, taxes, blackmail. We already saw the blackmail. That was the pictures there. So what do we got? Well, we've got some people save their passwords in text files on their computer. Don't do that. Oh, bank account information and taxes. All things that you use your personal computer for at home. So now, the Russians. This is what happened in August. This was against corporate enterprise versus us as individuals. One of the reasons that he did this is the attack approach that they took would not work on this particular device because consumer IoT tends to not have a lot of memory. Their approach was they ran TCP dump. If you ran TCP dump on anywhere that has more than a few devices, you're going to suddenly be overwhelmed. And we're already pivoting into how much space is left because their IoT devices are cheap, right? They don't have a lot of resources. So we're kind of just fitting in that little bit of space that just happens to be available. TCP dump would not work on a consumer device, but it does work on, say, a corporate printer, which could have gigabytes of RAM, because it's meant to handle multiple cron jobs across multiple users versus, say, what you're going to see in a consumer environment. So this doesn't work on our consumer device, but they got caught by Microsoft trying to do that, where they used the exploitation method and then they used TCP dump to try to identify their next step for lateral movement. I'm going to be continuing down the research here because I am going to find a consumer device that this will work on. You saw a much simpler approach that is more effective because knowing that I'm only going to be looking for, say, Windows file shares or a Linux file share, if I limit what my campaign wants to do, I use a lot less memory and I can get away with a lot more. So their technique was not quite as effective as what we're doing. This works against printers, video decoders, and VoIP phones. We talked about that. We'll skip that. Skip that. All right. So what can we do at home? How do we defend ourselves? 5. First of all, I can't hack what I can't touch. Firewall. Do we have firewalls? Everybody has a firewall. First problem, firewalls are also vulnerable as devices. But we can't solve all the problems. We can be, though, faster than the bear and the person running away from the bear. Wait, just the person running away from the bear. You just have to be faster than other users. We can't beat the bear. Now that that's the Russians, like we kind of fit that metaphor together. The fancy bear, cozy bear. Don't any of you read CrowdStrike propaganda? Yes? Yes, you do? CrowdStrike propaganda? I love you, Dmitry. Oh, sorry, that could have, oh. I love you, Dmitry Operovich. Change the default credentials, that should be obvious. Patching, okay. They don't make it easy for us. This is where it's incumbent on us. Just like every year we have to do our taxes, just like every year we have to do things we don't want to do. Patch. Go to each manufacturer site for each thing that you have, pull, and you're going to have to most likely in a lot of these cases manually, like through like a USB stick, install the patch and update it. But it is incumbent on us as users to do that because that currently is the model. And then we can segregate these things. Your router at home allows you to create virtual LANs. I can segment my network. Why is my PC talking on the same, where I do my taxes, on the same VLAN as where I'm managing temperature control, for example? Very simple to just create a specific VLAN for IoT devices and have your PCs only on their own thing. Can that be defeated as well? Yes, of course, but again, we're changing the environment because still most users don't do this. Call to action, so this is, since this is the I am the Cavalry track, everybody knows I am the Cavalry, right? No? Okay, I am the Cavalry is a loose organization of a bunch of independent security researchers where we're trying to pressure policy and manufacturing changes so that we can improve the environment. So the first is manufacturers should be accountable for putting insecure devices into our environment. Now, what is an insecure device is kind of in the eye of the beholder, and there is no such thing as anything that is unhackable, right? So some best practices being embedded to start is good. First of all, having a public disclosure POC. Somewhere, if we find something, we can easily be able to report that to the manufacturer to be able to manage that. Then expectations for them to take that seriously, look at those, triage those, and push out patches so that we are improving the environment. It's the life cycle that's the most important part of this, less something being published that's just secure. Hence, we should have a release plan. How do we easily get the patches to the consumers? Why isn't that something that's a part of the device? And then finally, this idea came out of something that I saw being debated in France. I don't know if it ultimately passed, but when a manufacturer goes out of business or a manufacturer decides to end of life a product, why don't we have them open source that code? One, that's an incentive for them not to end of life. Or two, if they do, it at least gives us the opportunity for the independent security research community to still pick up the mantle and push those patches out. So some other options that are out there. Anybody seen this? What are they doing in 2020? What is Japan doing in 2020? The Olympics. So them recognizing the challenge, they're going to do this for their citizens. Stay tuned. Some other options. This just came out a couple of days ago. So the Five Eyes, essentially the 5 English-speaking countries, have now agreed. I thought it was very kind of them on their webpage to provide their signatures. So that was cool. They've made a commitment, and I think I show this on the next slide, but basically that first part where I said this is what we should do, they've all made a commitment of 5 countries that they as governments are going to be pushing toward those standards. If you want to be a part of that, because this was a call to action that went out, one of the organizers, and actually Harley Geiger is local, but Jen Ellis, both of them are at Rapid7. They do a lot of policy work. So if you're interested in trying to make the world a better place, reach out. So happening here, there has been bipartisan legislation that has been languishing for over 2 years now. So both Republicans and Democrats, both in the House and the Senate, have agreed as sponsors to this idea. And they're not even pushing it on consumer devices. They're only pushing it for government agencies to just follow these principles. And this still hasn't passed. But fundamentally, they say, hey, NIST, tell us what to do. OMB, make it happen and audit it. Do the things that we just said. And then US government contractors who are part of that procurement process should follow through as well. Still hasn't passed. This is something that you can also, as individuals, in terms of call to action, write your congressman, write your senator, What the fuck, dude? Sarah and Peter Zatko started CITL. What they are doing is, and there's the website for it, is they are evaluating a bunch of IoT manufacturers across, do they have basic safety features as a part of the device? So ASLR, stack guards, and a non-executable stack. Guess what? Do you think most of them meet those standards? One of them actually responded to the press when when Sarah did an interview in August and said, well, we don't think those are important. True story. Like, you can't make this stuff up. References for more info. Obviously, I mentioned my nonprofit, the ICS Village. In addition, the IoT Security Foundation.org. I am the Cavalry, of course, which is just a loose confederation of like-minded individuals trying to make the world better. For specific guidance, NIST 800-183. CSA publishes security guidance for critical areas of focus, version 3.0. That's a mouthful. And then at the bottom is the lab. So this is your ability to take this home and do this safely only in your own home. I will not bail you out of jail. Look at me. I don't have money. Questions? Yes, sir.
I was wondering, is that because more users in those countries just did it, or was that like a government policy that made?
So why was it so bad? I'm not sure what I'm following.
No, so I was looking at the graph. I think it was like Morocco, Saudi Arabia, and Algeria. They had the highest.
Right. So why were certain countries a little bit better than others? Obviously, it's very hard to know the specific trends at a macro level. Most likely, a lot of those folks are actually much more invested in the mobile infrastructure than we are. So that is what I'm assuming was the case. There are a lot of folks over there, they don't have any PCs. Everything they do is off of a phone. And a lot of places, they've completely replaced currency by using phones for payments. Like the entire economy and the way that their way of life is on phones. I'm guessing that's why there was the higher uptake. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Is there anybody doing it right? Are there any brands that are doing it right?
No. Next question.
How is Google doing it wrong?
Actually, so yes, Google is doing a very good job. I love my Google Pixel. The reason I chose Google, actually, just because that kind of tied to this piece, is if you look at the Android platform, Google owns that operating system, and so anytime a patch is pushed out to a vulnerability, it immediately goes to anything that is running native Google OS, Android. All of the other manufacturers, though, have skinned their own things on top of it, which means have some period of delay between Google has pushed out something and then Samsung decides to do something, or LG, et cetera. But yeah, Google is one of the better ones. And plus, Google also has their Project Zero program, which is probably worth calling out on that note, where it's just a bunch of Google security researchers, and the company is pretty much just given them money and time, and they are allowed to go out and VR anything they want. They do competitor products, and they go and do responsible disclosure to those vendors to help improve the ecosystem. So I will give specific credit to Google, let alone for my joke of saying no. Thank you for your time.
Hack the Capital.
It's in May. So it's going to be like, I think it's May 5th or May 6th. 2020, yeah. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to some talk.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to the sim.
Thanks.
Yeah, test.